African Agribusiness Show Colloquium for 2021. I am pleased to invite you to welcome you, and to thank you for participating in spite of your very tight schedules. I'd also like to welcome and appreciate our sponsors, Farmson Company Limited and Livestock Feeds PLC. We had a morning session, and we also have partners, including Agro Nigeria, Livestock News, the Rome Business School, Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, NASIMA, Federation of West African Chambers of Commerce, the West African Fertilizer Association, as well as the Institute of Agribusiness Management in Nigeria. I'd like to inform us very quickly that we are also on Facebook as West Africa Agribusiness Show, and on Instagram as WAS_exhibition, and on Twitter as WAS_exhibition. We had a session in the morning and it was quite interesting. We're able to know that for us to have good agribusiness in Nigeria and by extension Africa, the government and the private sector have to be in close, association, close collaboration between the private and the public sectors. And then the government must also be willing to help the small-scale farmers, among other things that were discussed. Good afternoon, welcome again. I'd like to introduce the moderator for this afternoon's session, Dr. Tolulope Onodikwe. Dr. Onodikwe is an independent consultant who conducts technical and policy research in a range of areas, including agricultural development, service delivery, agribusiness, food security, as well as public finance for agriculture. She's a development economist with more than 12 years of experience in agri research and analysis. She's on the role of politics in shaping public finance decisions in agri and its implications for reform. And for about 10 years, Tolu has managed activities for the Director General's Research and Outreach at the International Food Policy Research Institute in Washington, D.C. She has also worked with Development Alternatives Incorporated in Bethesda, Maryland, and has practical experience in the agribusiness sector in Nigeria. She holds a doctorate in international affairs with a specialization in development economics and policy economy from the Fletcher Schools, Tufts University, a master's degree in international affairs from the Fletcher School, a master's degree in agribusiness from Texas A&M University, Kingsville, Texas, and a bachelor's degree in agricultural economics from the University of Agric, Abeokuta. And on the team, we have 3 people. They include I hope I pronounced that. She's a gender and Mangara Consultancy and Services Limited, advising companies entering the extractive and agriculture industries in Sierra Leone and Guinea. And she provides transport logistics to the agriculture and extractive industries. Prior to founding Mangara, she had worked in the oil and gas industry for about a decade for companies such as Shell and the African Petroleum Corporation Limited. She serves on the board of West African Fertilizer Association, WAFA, as the Gender and Integration Secretary. She holds a bachelor's and master's degree in civil engineering from Clarkson University. Next to her, we have Dr. Angela Adelaja Kuye, who is a development consultant and entrepreneur. She's the founder of Fresh Direct Produce and Agro-Allied Services, an urban farming and ag-tech company based in Abuja. She brings together communities and focus on engaging youths in agriculture with technologies. She studied epidemiology at the Michigan State University and biology at Temple University, but had interest or still has interest in agriculture and entrepreneurship, which led her to start her own businesses. Our major focus is women and youth empowerment, utilizing grassroots campaigns, technology, and innovation to assist these nation groups in solving global issues. She's on the advisory board of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Bookkeepers Program, an MIT Solver, and a World Economic Forum Global Shaper, and a mentor to aspiring youth entrepreneurs. She is currently the Senior Special Assistant to the Ogun State Governor on Agriculture. And last but certainly not the least, we have African farmer Mogaji, who officially changed her name to African Farmer in June 2005. He is the CEO of Farm Credits Nigeria, an organization designed to provide intelligent and timely financing as inputs to youth and farmers with a minimum of O-level education, those who are operating in production and processing value chain. His experience spans 23 years in livestock and crop production, which has made him a trusted authority, and he leverages and serves as an agribusiness analyst on numerous media platforms such as Channels TV, TVC News, Arise TV, Lagos TV, and Business Day. African Farmer is passionate about youth and women development and expresses in facilitating in Faith Foundation, Enactors, Leap Africa, National Directorates of Employment, Ashoka Changemakers Platform, and FCMB She Ventures Program, to mention a few. He is an Ashoka Fellow, an IVLP Fellow, and Cochrane Fellow. He is the current chairman, Agriculture and Agro-Allied Group, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and he gives back to the economy by hosting, to the community by hosting Agribusiness NG on Lagos Talk Shows, 91.3 FM, Mondays, 5:30 p.m., where he demystifies agriculture. He is the author of Farming by Revelation and co-authors Green Gold. Ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome to the afternoon edition, to the afternoon session of our colloquium for the West Africa Agribusiness Show 2021. And this afternoon session is titled Youths and Agribusiness, What is the Way Forward? And I'll hand over to Dr. Tulilope Onodikwe. But before handing over to her, we're going to have a short video break titled Introduction to Modern Agribusiness. You're welcome one more time. Thank you very much.
I have with me some of our distributors from the Republic of Benin. Can we meet you, please?
I'm Samuel Obona. I'm a businessman, Traders Group of Company. We are from Benin Republic. We are here to see the product of PSC Nigerian Limited here in Ikeja, to know how the business, the product will move forward in Benin Republic. And we are here with the Director General, Dr. Patrick Owele.
Now that you've come to Lagos, Nigeria to see our products for yourselves, what is your advice for the Republic of Benin as regards our solar products?
There is no way of not convincing our customers to come and buy PSC Solar products. Nous invitons toute la population du Bénin à adopter les produits PSC Solar.
Small holdings in developing countries have long been associated with poor farm practices, intensive labor, low productivity and low income. This has made the sector particularly unattractive to a new generation of farmers. But this seems to be changing. IICD's projects for young farmers in Kenya show that ICT can play a role in attracting youth into agriculture by enhancing access to market information, production techniques, new technologies and financing opportunities. Their perspectives have changed. Farming is now moving from a back-breaking, poorly paid, labor-intensive task to a solid source of income and a much more profitable and rewarding business. Let's have a look at an ICT-enabled journey into profitable farming. Young farmers struggle to make ends meet because of unprofitable agricultural activities. As soon as they hear about the potential of using ICT as a tool to increase their income from farming, they want to be part of this. Once they start acquiring basic ICT skills, the youths begin to identify the potential of ICT to make their farming activities profitable. The young farmers are trained at ICT centres that are also open to other farmers and community members. The training includes sessions on how to use ICT equipment and software that best addresses farming challenges within the local context. Gradually, the young farmers start applying their ICT skills to obtain reliable market price information. This enhances their power to negotiate and their position in relation to local traders, businesses, and other key value chain players. Their digital competencies, in combination with the right tools, help them keep records, identify crops that are in high demand, access information about pest control, and new farming practices and technologies.
We can search market prices using our phones. We can even Google the internet to see more information about agriculture. And also through videos, by seeing how other people works, help them a lot, because they see it practically and they go and work it as they see it.
The early adopters of ICT for farm management now reap the first benefits of their activities. This return on investment motivates them to continue applying their skills on their farms. Some of them start renting or buying land, in addition to obtaining land from their parents, which in turn offers employment opportunities to other youths.
We have a Facebook account. So we've been actually chatting with young farmers within our region. How did you go about this? Where do I get this information? So I think they are also benefiting a lot.
Due to their increased technical knowledge and higher incomes, the role of youth stands out more strongly, both internally towards their families and externally to extension agents and other community stakeholders. This recognition of their role and added value enables them to link up more effectively with the private sector. This also motivates them to continue applying ICT to farming.
After introduction of ICT, I have seen the youth change in attitude. They have found that farming is not only left for those people who are not educated. So the educated youth have come back to farming because of the introduction of ICT.
Eventually, to ensure the future viability of the agricultural sector, tackle rural poverty and generate employment, it is crucial to equip tomorrow's farmers with the right tools and skills that will allow them to start off their own journey into profitable farming. To learn more about IICD's projects in agricultural and economic development and to find recent research reports, go to iicd.org.
Mrs. Solubanjo.
Hello, okay, you're welcome back. You're welcome back. Please permit me to appreciate our sponsors one more time. Farmson Company Limited, Livestock Feeds PLC, and our partners, Agro Nigeria, Livestock News, the Rome Business School, Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, NASIMA, Federation of West African Chambers of Commerce, the West African Fertilizer Association, and the Institute of Agribusiness Management in Nigeria. And don't forget, we're on Facebook as West Africa Agribusiness Show, on Instagram as WAS_exhibition, and on Twitter as WAS_exhibition. We're expected to round off this session by 3:45 p.m. Thank you very much. Over to you, Dr. Tolu Onojikwe.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Olubanjo. Welcome, panelists. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining today's session, Youths and Agribusiness, the Way Forward. I just want to especially welcome the panelists on this session, Ms. Sinkari. Did I say that right? Yeah, Ms. Sinkari Sase, welcome. Dr. Angel Adelajakuya, welcome. I think we are still missing Mr. Mogaji, but I'm sure he'll join us before the end of the session as we proceed. So let's get into the discussion. And panelists, I know you already have the questions that I did send ahead of time. I would quickly go through those questions now for the benefits of those who are joining us online. We all know by 2050, sub-Saharan Africa will be home to 1/3 of the world's youth. Yet we know in many African countries, youths are marginalized and lack sufficient employment opportunities. We also know that agriculture has a lot to offer for broad-based economic growth in Africa. So today I wanted our panelists to use their own opinions, their own perspectives, to just answer these opening questions. Why are Africa's youth not attracted to agribusiness? Do you think it's a problem of a lack of sound policies in African countries? Or do you think it's just the implementation or just a lack of strategies to achieve the objectives of policies that are already in place? Or is it a failure of the public sector? Is it a problem of private sector approaches, or both? Ms. Sinkari, over to you.
Ms. Sinkari, your microphone is muted, please.
Okay, sorry about that. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, I was just saying thank you for having me on the panel. And I'm going to start with using the language from the video that described agriculture as poorly paid and backbreaking work, which is not necessarily attractive to our youth. And also the fact that agriculture is happening in rural areas with the poor infrastructure, social life, and all that brings with living in rural Sierra Leone or rural Guinea and the rest of Africa. So I think it's all this combination that makes, us attracting youths into agriculture or retaining youths in agriculture quite a challenge. We also have a history of associating smallholder farming with poverty. So if you've seen your parents in agriculture and your grandparents in agriculture, and they have been living what we refer to as the rural poor in Sierra Leone and Africa, that makes the sector unattractive to our youths. So there's a lot of work to be done around making the right policies in bringing youths into agriculture. I think there has been a real mandate in terms of making these policies specific not only to youths and as well as to women. Although, let me just state here that I think the issues around women in agriculture is very different from youth in agriculture. But when we look at the complex policies that it will take to attract youths into agriculture, I look at the people who are formulating these policies in terms of older civil servants, older development partners, and being able to relate to youths and what makes a sector attractive for them. It's difficult when it's been 20 odd years since you've considered yourself as a youth. So I'm always very careful when I'm talking about youths in agriculture. So I think there's quite a complex array of issues that need to be addressed when we talk about agriculture, bringing youth to agriculture. For me, one of the complexity about retaining youth in agriculture is where agriculture happens in Africa, that it happens in rural areas. And in these rural areas, you don't have electricity, you don't have access to water, you don't have educational opportunities, your social life is limited. And, you know, how do you keep a young person in that environment when urban areas have so much, you know, contain so much more attraction? So, you know, when agriculture does not stand alone in terms of development. So when we look at agriculture solutions, they involve other aspects of development, and infrastructure is one of them. Educational opportunities is another one of them. So I think, you know, there's a complex. Our policies have to be comprehensive. They have to be youth sensitive. They have to involve youths in making these policies, because sometimes when you look at who has sat down around the table to create these policies and how they are presented to the youth, it takes time to really draw out what youths want, because they're not well articulated. They're not all of them have the educational background to really interact equally with well-established policymakers. So when we're drafting these policies, I think we really need to make a concerted effort in making sure we get the youth perspective right at the start of drafting the policy, rather than at the end when you just go and test or try to implement these policies. And I think finally, my view on public sector, you know, what is the role, or whether the failure has been with the public sector and private sector. I think both entities have a role to play. I think the public sector have to design policies that will not only attract youth, but retain youth in agriculture. So it's one thing to bring them in, because you see a lot of programs where the youths are attracted into the program, they do it for 2 or 3 years, and then they leave. So attraction is very important, but retention is equally important. You know, how do we make youth look at agriculture as a lifetime career? In terms of us in the private sector, I own my own company, I'm in the fertilizer business. You know, how do I create a reward package that is attractive to youth? You know, when I think about, you know, young people in agriculture in Sierra Leone, you know, it's going to be designing that reward package that will attract them to work in my company, to you know, and that reward package is not only about cash. It's about what are your growth opportunities throughout this company. So people don't want to enter in as a farm hand and remain a farm hand for 20 or 30 years later. That was maybe fine for their parents, but it's not fine for them now. What are the education opportunities? You know, how do I keep growing that employee so that they stay within the company? So our reward packages within private sector have to be attractive to the youth. So I think both public sector and private sector have a role to play in both attracting and retention. I think I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nkari. Yes. Can we go to Dr. Kuye now, and we will still come back. It's a good thing you gave us an insight already into what you're doing, but we'll still talk a little bit more, actually not a little bit, about all that and how the private sector can really just make, you know, do their part to make agribusiness attractive to young people. Dr. Kuye, could you please address the opening questions based on your own perspective? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I tend to buck back about this narrative that there are no young people, or there are not that many young people in agriculture. I think the issue is not about young people being in agriculture. The issue is about young people being able to benefit from the dividends of agriculture. You have a lot of young people who are employed in the agricultural sector. They are farm hands, they are lower level laborers, they are breaking their backs for the benefit of others, but they are not able to reap those same benefits as entrepreneurs in the agribusiness sector and the likes. And you see that many of these youth face the same challenges that women face when it comes to access to land, right, and land rights, or access to finance, and other challenges that they face. So I want us to really talk about making sure that youth can have access to, upward mobility in the agricultural sector. And then for those who are not in the sector as well, I think the biggest issue is, the same narratives that we have about Africa, and Africa being the dark continent, and Africa being behind, are the same conversations that they have about African agriculture. When you talk about American agriculture, you talk about John Deere, you talk about tractors, you talk about generational wealth coming from agriculture. You hear the stories of people whose fathers were farmers, whose sons went on to use agriculture to go to university. I tell the story of a family friend of mine whose grandfather was a dairy farmer, whose sons went on to university and started a genetic company that sells semen and other genetic materials for artificial insemination, and who made enough money for their daughter, the granddaughter of that farmer, to become a mining magnate. So you don't tell those stories about agriculture, then you're not going to get people to be interested in agriculture. And you don't need, I'm an agripreneur, but I'm also in the policy sector. So you do have a lot of young people who are now starting to, at least in Nigeria, change the narrative and help to develop policies that are beneficial for youth. We have a lot of policies that have come out of the central bank and the Ministry of Agriculture that help youth get access to finance. And it's spurred and willingness of the financial sector to open up opportunities for women and youth in agriculture through financing. And so that's one hurdle that's reduced. I think you have other things like NERSL, the Nigerian incentive-based agricultural risk lending organization, where they help to reduce the risk for farmers. And that also helps youth. Even the collateral register has been something that has made it more beneficial for youth, because of the fact that before, I needed money to ask for money. I needed a house or landed property to ask for money. If I have money, why do I need money? But now they're understanding that these hurdles that maybe men would not face, women and older men would not face, women and youth are facing those challenges. And when you have young, successful agripreneurs, I am a hydroponic farmer, as well as a poultry farmer and a fish farmer. And at the time when I got into hydroponics, there wasn't as many people, there weren't people doing that here in Nigeria, and so we've been able to drive the vertical farming industry, the hydroponic industry. And you see that now, today, you have a lot of agripreneurs who are focused on vertical farming, urban farming, hydroponic farming, aquaponic farming, aeroponics, you name it, they're there in Nigeria. And it's exciting. You see a lot of people now pushing research and development, and these are young people. But it's because now those stories are being told. If you look at other industries, nobody had to tell anybody to become a pharmaceutical sales rep because they know that money is there. Nobody has to tell anybody to go and ride Okada because there's money in riding those Okada motorbikes. And the very young, poor young men will say, there's money there. If I can get a little bit of money and get an Okada, I can survive, I can feed myself. The same thing with makeup. How many ladies do you tell to go and start to learn makeup and become a makeup artist? It's because the narrative has been that, or an OAP, the narrative has been that if you get into these areas, there's actually a great opportunity for you. You can rise up, you can make money, you can become an entrepreneur and the likes. So I think the narrative, our lobbyists, our advocates for the sector, if we have them and if we don't, we need to start to develop with our associations, advocacy and media arms and components that drive the narrative that agribusiness is great and that there are young people who are making money from agriculture, and that, yes, these are the challenges and risks, but if you do it the right way, there's a great opportunity for you to grow and scale and provide opportunities for your family. I think also being able to show the narrative that, yes, our grandfathers may have been smallholder farmers, but now, you know, where's our interface? You went to school, you don't have a job, but your father was a farmer. Now you can be that link between those smallholder farmers. You can maybe start aggregation or do other things that will help to make sure that the smallholder farmer story is not the same and that it changes. So in my opinion, I feel like a lot of policies have been put in place. Implementation of those policies can improve, and that's what we need to work on now, is making sure that the policies are being implemented in the way that they were designed to be implemented. But then lastly, the narrative needs to change. And so if we can use this session and of course, media and marketing and advertisements and product placement to show that youth in agriculture should be the norm, then you'll start to see a lot more youth venturing into agriculture. The last thing I will say, sorry, is that research and development is key, right? You see a lot of young people who go to school for agriculture, they study agriculture, they study agricultural economics. In Nigeria, how many of them are practicing in the agricultural sector? You see a lot of people who come from other sectors into the agricultural sector. So being able to have a link or a nexus between private sector and research institutions, or academic institutions is really, really important, because that's where you're going to be able to teach those young people to find their niche and find their creative area in the sector. So I think that those are just my viewpoints on
that. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Kuye. Yeah, I've noted down so many points that I think that we will talk more about. But I would go back, since Mr. Mogaji is not yet here, I will go back to you, Ms. Senkari. And here we want to talk a little bit more, because you represent our private sector on this panel. I would like you to tell us a little bit more about what Mangara does in terms of youth development in agriculture, and how you see this. You know, what do you see as the ideal type of model? What are those things that you can scale up? What are those things that you think are working? What are those things that we need to be doing more of as it pertains to what you do? I do see that you have some interesting projects on your website, and for example, the demonstration, the demonstration farms. I think that's a good entryway for involving youth. But I would like you to tell us a little more, and just how you see this. As you tell us this stories, tell us how you see this shaping up, what you think we can, really, really focus on. At least what can be done to begin to see true impact. Thank you.
All right, let me start with talking a little bit about what Mangara does. I'm glad you've checked out the website. So Mangara, we're a fertilizer company. We are trading. Our ambition is really to set up the first fertilizer blending bulk blending plant in Sierra Leone, and we're shooting for next year for that. We're very keen on really bringing fertilizer into Sierra Leone that the market needs. So right from the start, we've actually done research in terms of, trying to produce a specific fertilizer blend for rice in Sierra Leone. And that's why we do the demonstration farms. And interestingly enough, our first demonstration farm was designed and put in place by a very senior agriculturist who had 40+ years of experience. But the two guys who ran the farm on a day-to-day basis were two young graduates from university who we got some land from the Ministry of Agriculture. They were assigned to that particular outpost of agriculture, and we brought them on board and say, we've designed this, but we need you to do the daily management, get us, make sure that the labor we've had is doing exactly what we tell them. we were there for the key activities. You know, when we're applying the lime, we were physically there. When we were doing applying the fertilizer, we were physically there. But that day-to-day weeding, bird scaring, everything it takes for 120 days of cultivation for rice to get into harvesting, they manage that. So we are looking at doing this nationwide with the new rice fertilizer blend we've designed with our partners, Notori in Nigeria. And we'll be doing this across 4 districts, cutting across the east to the west. So, and we will continue the same model, using, young people to manage farms, demonstration farms. So they're an integral part of the way we intend to work at our demonstration farms. Another thing that Mangara is doing around involving youths in fertilizer is training them as community agro dealers. So when we talk about community agro dealers, these are salespeople who will teach about our products, who will live in farming communities and sell our products to farmers. Our ambition is to have a nationwide distribution network. So bring the products as close to the farmers as possible, so they don't, farmers don't have to come to the capital to get their products. And really to have credible people in their communities who are trained by Mangara, tell them about the product, show them how to use the product, and also act as extension workers. So really teaching basic agronomy practices. The extension workforce in Sierra Leone is quite limited. So this is an area that Mangara was to differentiate itself from its competitors. And having youth community agro dealers are a key part of that strategy. And when we've been out to the communities, beginning this recruiting process with community agro dealers, and the youths are very interested because they see it as a way of being an entrepreneur from the get-go, because we are going to be working with the agro dealers in terms of securing lines of credit from financial institutions to buy the product, and they get a fixed margin from selling our fertilizer. And we will try, the more you sell, the more money you make. The whole idea is that you move from being an agro dealer from a small area to a district agro dealer to a distributor. And who knows, you come join us in the fertilizer trade, doing your own brand. So this is what, this is the way Mangara has been working. And just to make a qualification, the idea, the classification of youth changes from country to country. In Sierra Leone, we classify youth up to 35 years. A lot of countries in Africa classify youths up to 29, but because of our history, youths are classified up to 35. So if we take that Sierra Leonean definition, all the staff that work in my office are youths. I'm the only, myself and my agriculturists are the only adults in our office. So my business development person is a young woman who does all my business development work for me. She's first class. My business analyst is another young person. Both these people have science background. So by the nature of the work we do, and the fact that we really are integrating research and development into how we sell fertilizers from the get-go, we're bringing in young people who have those skills to do that kind of work. I hope that's giving you enough of a background as to how we're integrating.
Yes,
and
that is.
I have talked about what WAFA does with youth and women. We'll come to that next.
Sounds good. Yes, we will come to that. Thank you so much. That's great. I see that Mr. Mogaji has joined us. So I think we will give him the opportunity to respond to the opening questions before we proceed. Mr. Mogaji, welcome.
Thank you.
I believe you have the opening questions that were sent. Then I sent that email.
Yeah, but I actually, caught in traffic, so I had to look for an office to use.
Oh, I know. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Would you like me to go through those questions again, or you have them with you?
Please just go through them.
Okay. So the opening questions were just broadly, why are Africa's youth not attracted to agribusiness? So in your opinion, do you think it's a problem of a lack of sound policies or a lack of strategies, like implementation, issues of already instituted policies, or do you think it's a failure of the public sector or a problem, with the private sector approaches that are being used? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Doc. I hope one day I become a doctor too. So I think it's a combination of all. So I've been in the sector for 24 years, more in the rural communities, and now interfacing with the elites. So if you grew up in the suburbs with the farmers, if you work with them, you would not want them to go into agriculture or agribusiness, as it may be, because the only picture and experience that their parents and grandparents have and they see is poverty. So ideally, no one wants to follow that path. Everybody wants to be better than the parents. So with that picture, you won't blame youths, the rural youths, for not going into it. At the same time, I would blame government for what I call the only thing consistent in Nigeria for now. We're hoping it's better, is somersault of policy, or what I call policy somersaults. It's almost, a no-brainer that the policies, will be cut short in between. And, we've seen it happen, and it's almost across Africa. Almost, I use almost, not all. And so we have a very ill-informed private sector also. That think that because they can buy tickets to Europe and US and South America, they know almost everything about agribusiness. So they fail to listen to professionals. They want to copy what they see in the US, forgetting that in developed countries they practice precision agriculture. And in most African countries, there's nothing, precise. So instead of copy and adapt, as in adopt and adapt, they just copy and paste. So when you look at the youth seeing, okay, this top-notch, successful businessman or industrialist started a farm. 5 years down the line, 50% collapse, more redundant equipment and facilities. It doesn't paint that picture. And two, there's no deliberate, there's no intentional decision to control the narratives that the youth see. The more people like Dr. Angel they see, the more they want to become models in the agribusiness. So bottom line is that's why I do a lot of suits, and I wear good suits and branded suits, because we have to control what they see. What you see enters your heart. And so we are still not doing what needs to be done. We're focused on the production. Farm, 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 farm. Meanwhile, the value chain is what the youths can be attracted to. And so I would say it's a combination of all, and that's what this conference really does when you bring people who are practically in kind and also exposed to balanced conversations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Magaji. This is adding to the already rich conversation that we were having. Okay, so before where we were was that Miss Sinkari was actually telling us about what Mangara does. She told us briefly what Mangara does and how they engage with the youth and what, the things that we think are working, what we can do more of, or just what's working for them and what they're doing to actually make the sector what they are doing, which is in also linked to agriculture in many ways, make it attractive to the youth. So I was going to come next to Dr. Kuye so that she can tell us a little bit more about her own experiences, what's working, what we should be scaling up, what we should be focusing on. And just really those small successes that we can begin to think about growing, just so we can see some impact, and also to be able to tap into the potential that we have in Africa for a growing youth population that we can all not do anything about, that we have to harness to contribute to the success and to the development of the continent. So, Dr. Kuye, I'll let you tell us a little bit more about that before we come to Mr. Mogaji. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Just for full disclosure, like I said before, I founded Fresh Direct Nigeria. It's a vertical farming hydroponic company, how to use technology for primary production and how to make it attractive to youth. And I'm also the Senior Special Assistant to the Governor of Ogun State on agriculture. And for me, I will tell you that I think I came up in agriculture at a time where there was this drive for a narrative where agriculture is sexy. There was a time where the narrative was do agric. And there was a time where we had a minister of agriculture who was very, very determined to push the youth engagement in agriculture. We had YEEP, we had so many different programs for youth. We had You Win, we had other different programs, and they've continued in one way or another. And it actually spurred private sector to also do the same. So you now had programs like Leap Africa, have programs like She Leads Africa, you have programs like Asovilla Demo Day, you had programs like the Tony Lumulu Foundation, and you'll see that you have so many young agripreneurs who were birthed out of that. And so they are the unconventional farmer, or they're providing value addition. And you also see that even then you had larger scale companies that were able to, Sultry Farms and other large scale companies that were able to take advantage of interventions that federal government had that could help them scale their businesses. I think that has been something that has helped because of the fact that now looking at making sure that you have an inclusive agricultural system. So that means that you have a small intersection of people who have been equipped, who have been financed to be able to be that intermediary between large scale industry and the smallholder farmer. Like I said earlier, a lot of youth will find their niche. And I think that my brother, African farmer, said that a lot of young people will find their niche in that medium where they can actually be the voice for the smallholder farmers. They can actually help to coordinate, organize, and add value to what it is that the smallholder farmers are doing. In my role here as a senior special assistant, a lot of the projects that we have in the States, and I think that His Excellency, the Governor of Ogun State, was key when he chose to have a young woman as part of the agric team, as well as our commissioner who came out of the academic institutions. So he also understands the relationship with youth, with real youth, and what makes them tick. And so what we've done is we make sure that we had a sounding board. We've had a series of town hall meetings with the youth to find out what they're tired of, what was working for them, what they wanted. And so we started to craft our programs based on those needs. And so what we realized is that they have a lot of either experience, some of them don't have experience. How do we put together programs that give them that experience? A lot of them complained about the fact that once you give them that experience, what next? And so we decided that it can no longer just be empowerment, empower and leave. It needs to be a graduation model where if you had no skills before, you now have the skills. And once you get the skills, there's an avenue for you to implement, either in partnership with the state, using state facilities, or being able to get financing on your own to do it. And so we had quite a number of projects. We have the Ogunbroiler project, where we took youth who were interested in poultry. We trained them on poultry. We partnered with Amobim, which is a poultry company in Nigeria, and they provided them with their day-old birds and all the things they need, and they trained them on how to raise those birds. And for every cycle, they were able to raise a minimum of 150,000 naira, per cycle, which was pretty good. And they had a 98%. They had a 2% mortality rate, which was great, And so for them, the next step was, how do I then have my own pens? Because they were doing this in government pens. They now scaled to financing models, where we've done an access to agricultural finance seminar for agribusinesses. And so what we did is we're hand-holding them throughout the year. They selected what it is that their business is ready for. So for those who are not registered, we help them with that. For those who are registered, they have registered companies or at least business name. Do they have accounts? Are they able to do the needful to be financeable? And then we handhold them. We partnered with 4 banks that just walk them through the process of making sure that they can actually access funding. And so it's various funding. Some of it is grant funding. Some of it is access to loans. Some of it is how to make yourself investable, and giving them access to investors and investment firms. And so that has been something that has really helped young people to see, okay, it's not just waiting for someone to help me. I can help myself. If I am able to focus on certain things, I can actually help myself. I can be an employer of other youth. We also made sure we have a tomato and chili pepper program for women and youth. We realized that a lot of youth do not want to wait the 11 months for cassava. They don't want to wait an exorbitant amount of time. They want to see how they can invest in something that will give them good returns in a relatively shorter amount of time. So we said, okay, let's start to train them on tomato and chili pepper. We partnered with GIZ on that. We had over 3,000 people apply for that program, and we've already started with 1,500. We've trained them with GIZ. We've gotten them access to funding from Sterling Bank, and they will be going to field the end of this month, actually. And we also made sure that in their financing, there is irrigation, funding for irrigation in that, because one of the things that we also face is that if you want youth to tell the story about the successes in agriculture, you have to equip them to succeed and not to fail. The moment they have gotten into the project and there's failure, it doesn't matter what the situation, whether it's drought or whether it's insecurity or other things like that. The moment that they have failed, that story is going to go far. But the moment that you can show young vanguards in agriculture that have succeeded, nobody is going to have to market the project. I get calls all the time. Oh, I want to be in the cattle project. I want to be in the tomato project. I want to be in the broiler project, because of the success, because those youth have been able to evangelize because of what they have experienced. So it's more about looking at the actual results, no longer looking at empowerment in terms of how many people, but what's the quality of the engagement. And from that, let's say the empowerment is training, what next? Where have they been able to grow to? And so that's I think now what we're focused on. And it's also very, very important to us. And I think also being able to be real with yourself and assess where are the areas. Not everybody needs the same thing. And so you need to be able to, as public sector, tailor your interventions towards the needs of people, and give them the opportunity to pick and choose and tailor what it is that they need. And then once they finish that, come back to get something to take them to another level and be able to continue to track and monitor that. What we did in terms of being able to monitor is the governor put up a jobs portal. So everybody who comes to our projects registers with through the job portal. And for those who are in the rural community, in our local governments, in our zonal offices for our extension officers, we made sure that there is ability for them to be part of that process. And with that, we're able to track all the various projects and interventions that people have been able to benefit from. And then I think the last thing is support. So one of the benefits that we have been able to do is have extension support to all of the farmers that we bring on board. And for youth, day and night, they have questions and they have interest in how they can do certain things. They're not going to wait for the next program before they ask questions. And so I'm really grateful that we got an additional 100 extension officers to join the team for the state. It's not enough, we know that, but it's a step in the right direction when other states are reducing the number of extension officers. And we made sure that they all have cell phones, smartphones, they have motorbikes, and they're able to communicate with the people. I had, for the Tomato and Chili Pepper project, the commissioner gave me an additional set of extension officers to focus specifically on that project, which means day and night, they're on the WhatsApp groups with the farmers, they're in the field with the farmers, they each have a cluster to represent, and so they handhold them through their process. They don't feel like they're alone. And I think that when you have that, coupled with the fact that they also have options for financing, they also have options for, you know, I may not know it all, but where can I go to get that information? And somebody is there to help them. It's easier for them to feel comfort in entering into the sector. There's a lot of frustration that young people face when they get into agriculture. And there's a lot of ways that they can get it wrong. So being able to have that support system is really, really important. The last thing that we have is His Excellency approved an Agricultural Technology and Innovation Center. I think that it's really, really important, and I'll say it over and over and over again, that nexus between government needs to be that nexus between private sector, academic institutions, research, and MSMEs, because what you realize is that those MSMEs are the ones who are going to be driving research and development in a way that is sustainable, because at the end of the day, agribusiness is a business, it's market driven, you know, and so when we have that kind of interaction, it's a way for young people to key into the opportunities in a market-driven way that isn't stifled by government, that just government becomes that enabling environment, so.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Kuya. So I just want to bring in, before we take some questions that were sent to us for the panelists, I just wanted to draw some of this narratives together, which I will still, you know, kind of pick out the key points at the end, but just also speak from my own personal experience. My family has an agribusiness, and I grew up on the farm. And I'm thinking about, you know, all through when I grew up, we used to have, when I was, all through the time I was there, you know, just learning and also being groomed, I just remember us having, you know, training. There were people that came from the university to do their IT, you know, in Nigeria. I'm talking about Nigeria now. That came to do their IT programs on the farm. There were, you know, people who were just, you know, working on the farm, youths, and I'm speaking about youths now, who were just working on the farm, you know, to make ends meet. So we had a mix of young people on the farm. And that is one thing that I think it's just a private sector, an individual, I want to say, you know, if we count it that way, is doing to contribute to youth development through agriculture in the nation. So, and where I'm going to draw this in now to something that Ms. Sinkari said, is that we need youth-sensitive policies. And this, I'm saying this because agriculture has its own problems. Agriculture, I mean, when we're talking about youth in agribusiness, and we're talking about just agribusiness in general, the problems, the challenges are pretty much similar. What I'm talking about now is that where do we see, what are those things that can be done? Because I really don't want us to now think about the onus on the government. Where do we see models? Where do we see initiatives? Where do we see programs that can come in, where each and everyone is doing their part, you know, to kind of contribute to enabling youth, you know, get involved in agricultural value chains? The panelists, you have said a lot. I really think that all of these initiatives, all these programs that you are involved in are fantastic. But now I'm thinking about the fact that these programs also have been there for a while. You know, when you go to in Nigeria, for example, you go to every state, then they put together a program and say, you know, we have this youth program, we're giving them X amount of naira to set up, you know, a farm, or to set up as a startup, you know what I mean? So, and then it ends there, really. honestly, to be sincere, because a lot of programs don't get scaled up. And I think that this is where the bottleneck is what is it that we're doing wrong that we can learn from to move forward? It's a good thing, Dr. Kuye, you talked about all those programs. I do remember UWIN. UWIN was evaluated. You know, it did well. But what is, I don't personally know how UWIN fared, you know, after the evaluation. Like, what is it? What did we do with all those lessons learned? What did we do with all those things that made UWIN successful, you know, where we are today? So I think these are the things that I want you to also, you know, think about and please speak to when we answer questions or wherever, if you can give some remarks when we answer questions.
Can I just chime in?
Sure.
So I absolutely agree. I think that one of the biggest issues is we are still stuck on development aid, development partners coming up with programs for us, not driven by our own national policy or our own policy or our own long-term policy, because like my brother said, there's always a flip-flop, right? And so what the goals that we set for 2020 in one administration is may be different from what we set for 2020 in another administration, and we end up missing the mark. Now, like I talked about this tomato and chili pepper project. It was nothing new in the sense that GIZ was already training young people on tomato farming. What was new was that they had only reached, I think, about 300 people in our state. And we said that when you go, I think it came out of a conversation, when you go, how do you institutionalize it? And so our tomato and chili pepper program became a joint partnership with GIZ, where they just do training. They don't do linkage to finance. They don't do any other thing. We decided there needs to be a holistic system. Okay, after the training, what next? We lump them into cooperatives. After the cooperatives, what next? We make sure that they open their accounts, they have their meetings, they partner with the extension officer. The extension officer is at every single one of their meetings. Then what next? How do they work together? We started introducing them to markets, to off-takers as businesses. We started introducing them to input suppliers. Let them make the decision. We guide them. You know, so I think that if you can follow that kind of model at a national and continental-wide level, you'll see that a lot of the programs that are a drop in the bucket end up actually filling the bucket. But until we can actually make sure there's linkage from a 2-year funded program to an institutionalized program that is the responsibility of, let's say, the state, and that can be private sector driven, because if tomorrow we don't continue this program, guess what? Those farmers in those clusters for that tomato and chili pepper program, and we have over 70 of those clusters, will continue it because they have been given the skills and they've been equipped to continue to drive the process forward as entrepreneurs. So I think that looking at only government as a silver bullet, looking at only private sector as a silver bullet, looking at just one person as a silver bullet is not going to cut it. But making sure that each of us play our role in the limited capacity. Government has no business doing business, but we definitely have the business of making sure that we have an enabling environment for young people, women, and of course, all people in the agricultural sector to thrive. So.
Thank you, Dr. Kuye. I do like what you just said, because the role of government really is to provide an enabling environment for business to thrive. So, and I think once we get these things, then we can begin to have some peace that we're getting results and we're seeing some impact. But I want to go to Mr. Mogaji, and I will, to bring you back in, I will read one of the questions that we have from participants. It says, with the recent government policies in agriculture sector in Nigeria, funds are set aside as grants and SME loans for small-scale farmers and for youth who are interested in farming, but they face difficulty in accessing these funds. What or how should the government or agencies make this easy for people to access? What modalities are being put in place to reduce the difficulties? I do recognize that you are not a government person, official, but I would like you to, address that question.
Yes, thank you, Doc. I also interface with a lot of government officials. I'm also chairman agriculture and agro-allied at the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So it's a comfort zone. And I've known Angel for some time, even though from a distance, and Dr. Dedino, the current commissioner, for about 27 years, so I understand this. You see, one of the things that need to happen is government cannot succeed with the private sector. And so you still have a lot of people in CBN and the financial institutions who still don't understand the value chain. So a major challenge is the funding being released at the right time. So there are two issues. One is the funding, the people who have qualified, that they've gotten validation letters that they've qualified to get the funding at the right time. That's one. And two is even getting the funding at all. So, but one of the things that can happen is because policies, if we don't understand the government perspective also, we can move forward. There are policies that they must follow. They don't follow, they get sacked. And also there's employee morale coming low. These are things that don't add directly. So fuel price is increasing, food is increasing, salary is not increasing. And you still want them to be very efficient. So what needs to happen? I'll tell you what I'm doing now. I haven't been in production value chain for about 24 years. I've switched more into media and marketing. So, because there's no voice for these youths and people want to come in. So people have letters of approval. But if you come to me now or to our organization and we go on media, government responds fast to media. So I'm an analyst on the major television, radio, and co. And we have a radio program spanning for 2 years now in the heart of Lagos that we use to amplify farmers' voices. So if something happens in a location, I come on my program and I say, hey, there are these people who qualified, they've gotten letters, but they've not, getting access. So right now also we started an online radio program called agric.fm. And we have a program called Farmers Voice. You see, until we have these things amplified, this challenge will be there. And another thing is that, you see, the people like governors mean well in terms of grants. The government parastatal at the top mean well, but below there's a challenge. So they are cut off from the reality. So for me is we need to involve the developmental partners, and I mean the NGOs, the advocacy groups, such that whatever government is doing, they are involved. I'm US trained on US foreign policy and food security by USDA. And a component that works is that whatever government is doing, they are bringing the advocacy groups involved. So it's the advocacy groups that monitor these interventions and write reports and go on media. Media is crucial, but we underplay or undervalue the role of media. So what needs to be done is that media and advocacy groups need to come in so that they can keep amplifying what is working and also what is not working. But to say that you apply, don't forget we're in Africa. Everybody is protecting some interests in Africa, either political interests. The right people can apply, get their letters approved, but suddenly a party chieftain brings a list that must be honored, especially, next year election campaign begins in Nigeria, and I can tell you it will be strictly party funding party loyalists. But with the role of the media, making the media part of it, you can have like Ogun State is fantastic now with Angel and Dr. Dedino. With the team, the governor has gotten that team right. But guess what? When politics start now, no matter how passionate they are, politics come, before them. So, but it's the media that continues to showcase what's working and what's not working brings the politicians to a round table to showcase what is working as against what has worked. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mogaji. So I want to go take one other question, and this question and I do think Ms. Sinkari has, she's addressed this and when she talked, but I would like her to just chip in just briefly a little bit more. So we respond to this participant's question. I am agrarian, soil science specialist, yet I'm in the sales and marketing sector. But because I don't have the financial history, registered company, as mentioned by one of our speakers, how do you advise and encourage younger people to look towards agriculture as agricultural graduates rather than push them towards other work, other job areas? Ms. Sinkari, can you just briefly touch on that? Just advise this young person.
Okay, I think if I understand the question correctly, this person is just starting, and they don't have a registered entity to operate their business. A financial history. I don't think that should hold them back at all.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that I struggled with is, when you start in business, is how regularized you make your business from day one, because that comes with a lot of obligations. Deciding, when I became an entrepreneur, I'd been a professional for 10 years. So, and I moved back to Sierra Leone and really couldn't find the kind of work I wanted to do, and I became an entrepreneur. I was forced into this space. There's a lot of returning Africans are forced into the entrepreneurial space. But I immediately registered a limited liability company, which has so many obligations in terms of reporting taxes, etc., to the government. Had I been a more experienced entrepreneur, I'd have registered, a sole proprietorship, much less reporting obligation, much less tax obligations, etc. And, get a business going before registration. I hope there are no government officials hearing what I'm saying, but get your business going before registering anything. That's how you create trade history. That's how you create experience. And, when you've been doing it for a year or two, then you register something small. I see every educated entrepreneur registering a limited liability company. Well, there's so much obligations that comes with a limited liability company. You really do have to start, making your way up the registered entity ladder. So get into, if agriculture is what you want to do, get into agriculture. There's so many different entry points in agriculture. Start doing it and then build the history from there. For most businesses in Sierra Leone, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Sierra Leone. This panel is dominated by Nigerians. Their storyline is very different from countries like Sierra Leone.
Please do.
So I'm going to talk about countries that are like Sierra Leone: Guinea, Liberia, Gambia. Smaller entities. But start. Create a history, get into the business, start whatever entry point you want to get into. For a lot of businesses in Sierra Leone, we start with our own capital. Okay, whether that capital is sought from your family members, whether that's capital you earned, you've had small jobs and you've put together a small package. The entry capital for most businesses in countries like Sierra Leone or smaller countries is pretty small. $100, $200, you can start. And the biggest thing is to start. So I think you should start, and then when you know what you're doing, then you'll know exactly what you want to register as, and then you create that history, and then you go to the financial institutions for credit. It's going to be very difficult to get credit without a credit history. That's the reality. You know, I don't think that's a government policy. And it's quite interesting as I hear my other two very well-educated panelists and advocates speak about, you know, government role. I agree with the government's role is to provide an enabling environment, and then the entrepreneur's role is to really make it happen. And I use the word make it happen very broadly. So, yeah, I think that will be my advice.
Dr. Tolulope, I hope you don't mind if I say something.
Sure,
before he gets in here, I'm the ill-informed private sector. That's what Dr. Tolu, you know, called me when we started. But you hadn't signed up yet.
Okay.
No, not at all.
So you see, it's I do a lot of projects across West Africa, Senegal, Burkina Faso, Gambia, and it's the same. What you said is the same with Nigeria. $100. You know, there's a value chain for everybody. And like in Nigeria, no financial institution gives you money to start. You don't have any record. So I teach what I call the power of 50,000 naira, which is equivalent to $100, which you can start trading. You can be a solution, you know, you can be a solution, a miracle to a farmer by just buying what the farmer is producing, you know, and selling. So it's more of a private sector, but when you are scaling, you need government. You need government policies to be stable. So it's the same across West Africa. It's just, you know, Nigerians, it has to be big to be good. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. This discussions are
Can I also add in there?
Sure. Briefly, yes.
I'm coming from someone who started small, and I guess my company would still be considered an MSME or a startup or whatever. I think I was practicing for about 6 months before I started my business did my business registration. And even then, I have friends who had done business name once they knew that they'll make money, because if you're not making money, there's no need. But I still kept my books. I still kept my information so that I could show how much I've actually put into the company. And then once I did that, I think it took me at that time, CAC, which is the Corporate Affairs Commission, was really rough. So it took me about a year before I could get my business incorporated and get my documents and everything. But now it's much better now. And once I did that, it actually opened me to a host of opportunities. And being able to have my books in order, that actually made things a lot easier for me. So what I will tell you is what I tell the young cohort that we have for our agribusiness access to agricultural finance program, which is many of them didn't have anything. The least you can do is a business name. I think in Naira, that's 10,000 Naira. I think, is that about $20, $30 or so, or maybe less now, you know, but start with that. You know, if you really believe this business is making you some good money, start with that. In terms of investment, like my brother said, you can easily, like I started with goats. Nobody really knows that I started with goats before I got into hydroponic farming. So you just have to test the waters. And the best way to do that is test small. You see a lot of companies in Nigeria that go big and then they go bust. And they spend so much on the optics, they spend so much on every other thing. And at the end of the day, they haven't really gotten the business properly set up and set up in a way that understands the Nigerian business climate, you know? So there's a bit of dancing between having that native intelligence and of course being very well educated and having those book smarts here in Nigeria, because you have to be able to negotiate with the truck driver and say, oh God, that's not the price that you gave that person, you better give me the same price. And you still need to be able to say, you know, go to the bank and command the presence that they believe that, okay, if I give this person my money, in addition to all the paperwork, they can actually access. I think that the other big thing that we haven't talked about is the fact that a lot of the intervention programs that we've had for access to finance have actually excluded rural youth. And you know, it's always an opportunity for urban youth. Urban youth have their BVN. Urban youth have, you know, access to internet. Urban youth can go online to Nursel Microfinance Bank and register for programs. But how do we empower? Because you'll be surprised that you may put money into a rural youth for maybe pepper grinding or cassava production or something else, and they can actually, it means more because they can actually add value to their family. They may be that only breadwinner in their family. So being able to have interventions that cater to rural youth is something that we're not really having that conversation about. And I think we need to, because UN didn't really get the access of rural youth, and many of the other interventions totally dismissed them. And so you keep pushing the funding to the people who are more likely to get the funding. So let's start to look at how do we make the funding available to those who are consistently excluded. So.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kuya, for that. So what I will do now, before I give the panelists an opportunity to just give their parting words, I'm going to take a stab at summarizing some of the key points that we've discussed today. I want to begin from, from what Ms. Sincari had talked to us about earlier, and I would pick them as because a number of them overlap with what the other panelists have said too. We do know, one, that we need a change of perspective, a change of narrative. That is needed, and linked to these are a number of elements. So we have the element of using youth to actually change the narrative. So Dr. Kuya called them young vanguards. I call them also champions. So we know that when other youths see youths that are doing well in the business, we really need to put them at the forefront so they can, one, they do understand. I mean, it's a case of you understand better. I think somebody had mentioned that there were a number of people, maybe it was Dr. Kia, or the people who are actually sitting down there and designing these policies. A number of them are, people that are older, or maybe it was Ms. Sincari, I don't remember, but a number of them are older and they really do not understand what youths, want or what they're going through. And so therefore you want to bring these people as champions, you want to bring the youth to the table so that those programs, those policies are actually tailored to their needs. So I think that is one element of it. The other element of it, which Mr. Mogaji also spoke to, and which I very much see him in that role, as advocacy. We need the NGOs to come in. We need that voice. We need people like him, more people like him. We need more people who can speak, for the sector, more people who youth can look up to and who can actually connect with them. I think that's the word, the people who can connect with them also. So sometimes we might use the word lobbyists, we might use the word for, those who are doing policy advocacy and all that. So that's one element of that's another element of changing the perspective. And of course, linked to using youth also is the key thing about telling the success stories, no matter how small. I guess we need to amplify the success stories. We need to amplify what is working. We need to amplify what we need to do more of. I think there's a lot of talking about what's not working, and which we sort of need to turn that around and make it, use that as we need to turn it around, use what's working as a strategy to really get rid of what's not working. So another thing that, which is important, Ms. Sincari had mentioned youth-sensitive policies. And I say this, I keep saying this because it's fine for us to have youth-specific policies, but then the broader policies for agriculture or the broader policies, that affect agribusiness, the ease of doing business and things like that, they need to be sound. when they are sound, and they need to incorporate, you know, needs, not necessarily that it's a youth policy, but it needs to incorporate the ease of having youth get on those agricultural value chains and prosper in doing business in agriculture. So, I mean, they're not separate from each other, you know? So I think that is so important also for us to put out that narrative there, that these policies, the broader policies that are also instituted, need to just already have packages that are attractive to the youth. Ms. Sinclair did mention about reward packages. And you know, that is something that Mangara is doing, and I think that is great. I think that is something that the private sector, it's a private sector approach that will be great too. You know, when youth, which I think Dr. Kui also mentioned, that upward mobility, when you give them, when you let them see that there are growth opportunities, you let them see that there are educational opportunities. Honestly, there is no youth who is going to be seeing what's going on around them and would want to just sit in isolation or just be tied to and be like, well, I mean, okay, I'm gonna stay as a farmer. Of course, farming is for the poor, which is so wrong. But, you know, so when we let them see those opportunities, when we let them see those potentials, I think that will, and this can be done by everyone. I think we sort of getting into that stage where we need to move beyond just what government needs to do. You know, I think we need people that are going to be out there also. We need institutions, we need organizations that are going to be out there and just get out there and just supplement whatever government is doing to change this narrative. One other thing that I wanted to, that Ms. Sinclair talked about is she talked about the agro dealers. I think, and here I'm looking at, you know, not necessarily production. So you're talking about those people who along the agricultural value chain. And I think this can also come in where those points along the agricultural value chain where you can also bring in youths, which I think will be very attractive to them. Yes, we do want them also involved in production, but we already know that there's a big problem there. And while we are trying to address this problem and make production attractive to them, I think one of the places we can leverage right now are those other linkages along the chain that are more attractive to them. When we bring them into those points, I think gradually when they see also, they're going to go back and get into the reach. You know, if a youth is an agro dealer and is dealing with a farmer, eventually they're going to understand very well the sector, the structure of the sector, and I think they'll be interested, you know, in also getting involved in that area. So I think those are some of the things that I picked up. The other thing is that we need local specific policies. So just know that not one policy, you know, works for all. I think support system, Ms. Sinclair talked about even in serial loan for them, about how they are even using the youth as extension workers. And I know that Dr. Kuya talked about Ogun State, which honestly, I do want to just recognize that I hear a lot of great things about Ogun State and agriculture. So I really applaud you for all the work. But I think that those are places, because we keep complaining about how extension officers, the dearth of extension officers in Africa. I think if we can make that as one opportunity that we can draw youth into and just use them to, because a lot of them anyways went to school or and studied agriculture. So I think those are places that attractive opportunities can pop up for them. Of course, the role of innovation, technologies, you know, those are key, which Dr. Kuya touched on. And these are things also that we need to use to link up the private sector and research institutions and academia and things like that. And of course, that's another area where we can really leverage institutions, academic institutions. who already are interacting with young people who are in agriculture, who have studied agriculture. We can use them. I mean, I think, and when I say use them, I just mean that they already have access to them. So I think if relationships are forged or partnerships are forged, whereby a private sector can, like Ms. Sinkari now can go to an academic institution when she needs somebody to manage a demonstration farm. I'm just using that as an example. I think those are things that we can also scale up and do. I think lastly, I will just talk about and just point also to promoting sustainability of programs that maybe test programs that will begin, or programs that come from development aid. I think this is a key thing that we really need to work on addressing. How to scale up those programs, how to ensure that those programs don't just die, how to make sure that the successes that come out of those programs are replicated. I think once these things are instituted, we will be able to to make much progress. I know there are progresses now. There are pockets, small pockets of success stories, but we really need in Africa to scale up this success stories so that we can have large scale impact. So I will turn it over to our panelists just briefly. 1 minute, we have about 9 more minutes to end.
Dr. Nadipe. Please, before your final comments, we have a question in the chat section from Ismail Abubakar. The person wants to know, he needs more explanation about value charge.
Okay, value charge.
Value chain.
Yes.
Value chain.
He wrote, apologies please, he wrote value charge in the chat section.
Okay.
And then we have a certain Dr. Ali who wants to quickly make a contribution. So once the value chain question is taken, please let's allow Dr. Ali, if he's ready, to give his contribution, and then the panelists can round up, and then we go on a short break. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Ladipo. And in terms of when you say explanation, for our participants who is asking for an explanation about value chain, we're talking, I guess you're referring to agricultural value chains. Agricultural value chains are just subsectors in the agricultural sector. So for example, you might be in the poultry, it might be a poultry value chain, it might be piggery, it might be crops, those are the value chains that we're referring to. I hope that answers the question. I'm going to turn it over quickly to, did you say Dr. Ali? Yes, 1 minute, please, because I need to give the panelists a chance to 1 to 2 minutes to give their parting thoughts. Thank you. Mrs. Ladipo.
Please, the panelists can go ahead, please.
Okay, great, thank you. So I will begin with Mr. Mogaji.
Okay, when we're talking about the youth, I'm really excited about what Dr. Angel said about the rural youth. We've practically forgotten rural youth across the continent. We focus more on the urban youth because it's easier to showcase them. And I think now is the time to focus production on the rural youths and processing. When I mean processing, focus on cottage value addition, which is processing at the grassroots level. So just add that first level of processing and others take it and scale it. So you can dehusk your paddy rice in the farm. That's the cheapest way to do it and the most sustainable way to do it. And let others come and buy and take it out and turn it into flour and package it and sell and probably look at export. So we need to look at the comparative advantage. So I would say comparative advantage is a key thing we should focus on vis-a-vis each environment, and collaboration. Collaboration, Mrs. Modukwe, please, Mrs. Modukwe, thank you. So collaboration, we should be looking at the youth with the lens of collaboration, not aid, not help, but collaboration. When we put on that thinking cap of collaboration, we will get them to reciprocate. So collaboration with them, a model that has worked for us, which I'll be willing to share with Dr. Angel later, is the rural youths. We give them premium input that is used in the US. That's what we use, and Switzerland. We take it to them and we fund them. We tell them, go to the market, find out the price. They find out the price. We give them, they use it under our supervision, close supervision. At the end of the day, we split the fund, the proceed 50-50. They determine how much they sell. In fact, we've had cases where they increase the price 3 times. We just take the back seat. We're splitting the money 50-50. So that's collaboration. So you don't have to monitor them when you are collaborating. So the mindset of collaboration must come in to get the African youths who are very social media exposed and savvy now to get into the agribusiness. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Mogaji. Ms. Sinkari, please.
Okay, I think for me, in summary, I think I mentioned this briefly. I think the challenge around youths in agriculture is not only about attraction, it's about retention. Okay, so, you know, there's a lot of programs out there that bring youths into agriculture, but they stay there for 2 or 3 years and then they move out of agriculture. So, you know, as we as a company think about this, as we as WAFA, the West African Fertilizer Association, think about how we work with youth, we really want to look at sustainable programs where youths will commit to agriculture for the long term. And I think the private sector has a key role to play in that, with the enabling environment that government should create, you know. But I think there are clear roles that each party has to bring to the table. And for me, and from a cellular perspective, when I talk about youth in agriculture, we really are predominantly talking about youth in rural Sierra Leone. Agriculture is not happening in Freetown. It is happening, and whether that is production agriculture, whether that's the value chain within agriculture, it is still primarily happening in the rural areas. So we really need to look at development that is broad-based across Africa, that is not centered only in the urban areas, because it is unfair to tell our youths, stay in the rural areas where there's no water, no electricity, marginal educational opportunities, and farm the land at, you know, very low scale rewards, and not come into the city where, you know, the amenities are readily available and the opportunities are plenty. So development has to happen broadly, and agriculture is one of those areas where infrastructural development also needs to happen. And so there's, you know, agriculture is a complex activity. So if you want to keep women in agriculture, and women are in agriculture, we don't have options. Youths have options, okay? So, and because we're developing now a tech savvy youth that are connected to the world, you know, they see the options that are out there. They've seen the historical perspective of parents and grandparents being grounded in poverty, being in agriculture. How do we change that paradigm? So I do agree with, you know, Dr. Angel and Mr. African Farmer, you know, about, you know, changing the narrative, the advocacy, you know, showcasing the success stories in agriculture, because it is difficult to find successful Africans whose core wealth has been generated in agriculture. You know, especially in the smaller countries like Sierra Leone, it's great to know that Dangote now is going to fertilizer. And, you know, everybody on the continent who knows who Dangote is. You have South African agriculture billionaires, you have in Kenya. But in some of these other countries, you're not seeing those millionaires. You're seeing millionaires that were created in trading, in oil and gas. Oil and gas millionaires are quite common in Africa. How do we create agriculture millionaires so that the youths, when they're studying, that's what they want to become, an agriculture millionaire. It has to be a sexy, successful story for youths to want to come into agriculture and stay in agriculture. And for me, one of the positive things in Sierra Leone that's happening is that agriculture is now part of the core primary and secondary education. Okay, when I was in school, agriculture was not part of our primary and secondary education. Now in Sierra Leone, my children in primary school, they're doing agriculture as a core subject. They're doing agriculture as a core subject in secondary school. I think that's a great achievement by our government. So a lot of work to do. I'm committed as a private sector person. I'm committed as a WAFA member, really, in making sure that what I do fully encompasses youth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sinkari. Mrs. Olubanjo, please give us 5 minutes to round up. Quickly, I move to Dr. Kuye.
So I'm actually really happy with the panelists that we have on this session. And I don't think I have to say much more, except for the fact that when Mrs. Sinkari mentioned the fact of the amenities, it's really key. And that's a whole nother area. Like in Ogun State, we have a lot of mini grids coming. Agripreneurs in the rural communities can actually start up even at the micro scale, because if there's energy, then you can actually, run your businesses, run your machinery that you need. So I would also suggest that those who want to help the agricultural value chain and help attract youth in agriculture also look at how they can start their businesses by supporting economically active poor or rural communities that need some of these infrastructure that may not necessarily need governments to implement those things, but through collaboration and through private sector can drive some of these initiatives. And the last thing I will say is, like one of my youth said, if you include us, if you don't include us, at the end of the day, we'll all suffer, because at the end of the day, when all of the people in the agricultural sector are old, we all live, we all die. Who will be left to farm the land, and who will be left to ensure that we have food security? So we cannot do it without the youth. They have the choice, but we don't have a choice. We must make sure that we create avenues for them to get into agriculture early enough that they can thrive, they can drive the sector to the next level. So that's my simple, contribution. And thank you for having me.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Kuye. And just before I thank the panelists, I wanted to point quickly to something that Dr. Kuye said. I think investment in data, tracking, and just bringing together all of this knowledge will be important. I really want to thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mogaji, Ms. Sinkari, Dr. Kuye. This has been a wonderful session. On behalf of WAS, we want to appreciate you. Thank you for taking our time out of your busy schedules to be here to, talk to us about these important issues. I hand over now to Mrs. Ladipo. Mrs. Ladipo.
Thank you so much, Dr. Onodipe. Please, we'll quickly go on a short break, and then when we come back, Mrs. Olubanjo would round off. Thank you so much for your patience.
Hello, everyone. And so it's on this note that I would like to declare that today's colloquium is closed. I want to thank all our participants, the panelists, Sinkare Sise. I hope I got that name. Please, if I didn't get it, please forgive me.
That is fine. Good pronunciation.
Please, please, please. Dr. Angel Adelaja Kwe, Mr. African Farmer Mogaji, and of course the moderator, Dr. Tolu Onodikwe. Thank you very much for squeezing time out of your very busy schedules to be part of this colloquium. I also like to appreciate our sponsors, Farmson Company Limited, Livestock Feeds PLC, our partners, Agro Nigeria, Livestock News, Rome Business School, the Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, NASIMA, the Federation of West African Chambers of Commerce, West African Fertilizer Association, and of course, the Institute of Agribusiness Management in Nigeria. I'd like to thank you very much for being part of the colloquium for this day. And I'd like to invite you to tomorrow's edition, which is going to be the very last one for the year 2021. And I want to say thank you very much. God bless you, and God bless you. Have a nice evening. Bye.
Thank you, Mrs. Olubanjo. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you very much. Thank you.